Welcome back, everybody. This is Glenn from Focus Your Ads. With me, of course, today is Dan, and we're going to have a conversation about locations and how to set up your locations in Google Ads so that you're able to spend money where it's important to spend the money. So, Dan, if you want to kick us off, and let's have some fun with this one.
Sure. So the first one we're going to be talking about is our radius. So this might be, maybe you're familiar with it, maybe you're not, but this is a neat feature in your location settings where you can actually target a location instead of just, a radius instead of an actual location. So what I mean by the radius is it's essentially a big circle. If you look at like Google Maps or something like that, you'd be putting a big circle around an area. And that's what the radius feature is. And I find it's really handy to be able to do this because you're not as restricted this way. Like sometimes, let's say you live in or you work, like your business is in Toronto and you're targeting Toronto. Well, there's kind of a boundary around Toronto, and you don't always want to be targeting just that area because maybe you're on the edge of Toronto, so it's kind of awkward now. You have all of Toronto, but you only want to target maybe the west side of Toronto instead of the east side as well. So now you have this kind of dilemma. Well, I don't want to not show up for the other side. You're kind of stuck. So that's where radius comes in. So you can grab this radius feature, which you can find if you go into your settings. Inside locations, there's two different spots you can find it. So you can find it under locations in the campaign, or you can actually go into your settings of your campaign and find it there as well. So you have two different spots to find it. So one use case scenario for this would be if you, like I mentioned before, if you want to target a specific just spot around your business. So maybe you have 5 kilometers you want to target just around your business. This allows you to be really focused in on just that area. You're not picking up on anything that's too far away. Maybe you're a plumber, you don't want to drive all the way across town because it's going to waste your entire day. So you want to make sure that you're targeting this location really close to you to start out with. And then it allows you to also now select multiple different spots. So you can select little circles around and you can kind of almost create like this little map yourself. So you can pick the different locations within a location. Another neat thing you can do with this is you can actually layer them on top. So you could have this smaller circle, and the smaller circle could have be a 5 kilometer radius around your building, like your business. Then you can expand. You can have another circle around that's 10 kilometers. So you have this bigger circle around the smaller circle, and then you could have another one even that maybe 20 kilometers. And you can have these layers happening. And the neat thing with the layers is that you can actually increase your bids for each layer. So if you want to have a really small circle around your business and you would want to bid higher on that small little circle because it's closer, it means you don't have to go as far. So you can bid maybe plus 10 on a bid adjustment. And this could be found in your location settings as well. You can add these bid adjustments. Then for the next one, you could have maybe plus 5% bid adjustment. And then maybe the last one is 0% or maybe a negative 10%. That way you're spending less money on those circles as they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And you can do this pretty much anywhere. You can even layer this over top of like a city. Like if you had Toronto as the boundary around Toronto, you could also have your radius as well, and they would work together on this. So there's lots of neat things you can do with a radius when it comes to Google Ads and location settings.
So, Dan, you could have your focus right in Toronto, and then out towards Oakville, you happen to know the clientele is out there is strong, so you could put one out there, do a bid adjustment there, and then out towards, say, Oshawa, you could put another circle going that direction, like totally different directions, and have that one even less of a bid. So you're pulling Toronto first, Oakville's second strongest pull, and then Oshawa. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So you can have these kind of layered on top, gives you a lot of control, and you end up with a pretty nice. It gives you a lot of control of the bids because maybe you don't want to spend so much money in these certain areas. And this is just one more tool in your tool belt on how you can target certain areas. Like, for example, if I look at, I think it's right in Toronto or near Mississauga. Oh, there it is. Yeah. So there's a spot between Mississauga and Oakville. and it's called Milton. It's just now we're talking more down to like the areas within the city, because I'm not even sure if Milton's actually a city or not. But this Milton has it's very long area. So if I wanted to select Milton, it's going to select a huge area around Toronto or around I think it's closer to Mississauga. But if I don't want to select that entire location, now I'm kind of stuck. I either select it or I don't, because I'm now down to the postal code level and I can't get any closer than the postal codes. So what you can do is you can set these radiuses, and I could fill in that information with a radius, and I could select, okay, maybe it's 10 kilometers. And then if that's too big, oh, maybe I want to just move it down to 5 kilometers. And I can start filling this map in with the radius, and you can kind of fill in the gaps and hit the spots that you want to hit, rather than allowing the postal codes or the city boundaries to dictate where you're going to actually put your locations.
And just so everybody knows, what Dan's actually looking at here as he's doing this is a map that comes up while he's making these entries on Google, and he can see those circles actually appear over the little communities or whatever as he's doing it, and he could watch how they overlap as he's building this. So it's not hit and miss and you got to know everything about the area. You can actually do it on the map. You can see it really nicely.
Yeah, and the one thing that just to keep in mind when you're looking at for this map, it's that it doesn't show up unless you have a campaign selected. So if you can't find this map and you're like, where is this map? Make sure you have a campaign selected before you look for this map, because you'll see your bids or you see your areas, but you won't actually see the map. I don't know why, but you don't see the map unless you have a campaign selected. So just something to keep in mind, because it is easy to miss that. You might be getting frustrated not being able to find that map, but that could be the reason. You just have to select a campaign, and there it'll be. All right, so when we're talking about these locations, I do want to go just take a step back and just talk about where you could actually find these locations. Just because maybe you're not familiar with how to get around your Google Ads. So if you are looking for these locations, you can find them under campaigns. So if you're going to under your account, go to campaigns, and then go down. You should see locations, and that's where you'd find your location. That's one way to find them. The other way would be actually go into your campaign settings. So you go under campaigns again, and this time when you're in your campaign, you'll hover over the title of the campaign, and you should see a cog or a gear pop up. If you click on that, it's going to bring you into your settings, and this is the other spot where you can find your location settings. If you scroll down into this area, you can see that there's locations, and it's going to allow you to enter your locations in here. Now, I find this way is a little harder to view because you're not going to see a map or anything like that. So the other one, locations in its own tab, that's the one that allows you to see the map and everything. Now, the one under the settings, though, brings me to our point number 2 that we're going to be covering here, and that is another location setting that I find most people miss. They either miss it or they don't know about it. And it's partly because Google puts it in kind of a hidden location. They kind of hide it in this spot. So the only place to find this is under the campaign settings. And that's why I showed you that there's 2 different ways to get to this. Because if you go into the locations under its own tab, you won't find it. But if you go into campaign under the settings, to the campaign settings, you can find it there. Now you're going to want to come under your campaign settings and go down to where it says locations, just where we were before. And then at the very bottom, you see location options. So in location options, you're going to find 2 different settings that you can either leave on or turn off. Well, you have to select one, I guess. It's more of what it is. One is recommended and one is not recommended by Google. The first one here is called presence or interest. People regularly in, or who've shown an interest in your included location. And that one is recommended. So this is presence or interest. And we'll touch more on what these are here in a second. The other option is presence. So people in or regularly in your included locations. These are your 2 options, and these are hidden by default because you have to drop this location option down to see it. And it's always on presence or interest by default. So this is what you'd find when you first start in a campaign. You're not necessarily going to be able to find this setting unless you go digging for it. So when it comes to presence or interest, or like when you want to select, Normally, I would recommend people actually go the opposite direction of what Google's recommending. And I'm not saying what Google's recommending is bad, but the reason I would go the opposite direction is because if you're starting out, you probably want to get the best quality traffic possible. And there are some situations where having presence or interest makes sense, but I think having just presence helps you get better quality traffic because it's going to show people that are in the area you're targeting. Now, if you have presence or interested in, that means you're expanding to people that might not be in your target location. So you could get people from, say, if you're, let's go back to Toronto again. Say we're targeting Toronto, and let's say someone from India is looking for, maybe they're looking to move to Toronto and they actually want to get a job as a plumber, or something like that. So they could type in Toronto plumbers near me, or not near me, but Toronto plumbers, and they might actually see your ad. But maybe you're not looking to hire anyone. You're just looking to actually provide a service in that location. So now someone from far away is getting and clicking your ad, which could cost you, $5, $10, $20 for a click if it's depending on the bids. So that could start to add up quite a bit. And there are good reasons though for having interest. For example, maybe someone, let's see an example here. Say someone's moving to Toronto and they are looking for someone to, let's say, mow their lawn. And so that person types in, need someone to mow my lawn in Toronto. So now they're using that term. They're not from Toronto, but they're moving there in the future. Google's going to make that association because they're using Toronto in the term. And then that could work out because they could now call you and book you as maybe a regular lawn maintenance person for them. So that could be some kind of a future purchase that's going to benefit you in the future. But for me, to be on the safe side, I always recommend to go with presence, at least in starting out. And then in the future, you can always test this. This can be a way to get a little more traffic. It can help you to get that little bit extra traffic from your Google ads. So that's kind of the difference between the presence or interest. So I recommend doing presence for now, but there's always a reason for doing interest as well. The other one that we have here on our list is going to be under locations again, of course, because we're talking about locations here only, and it's going to be exclusions. So if you've ever set a target for an area, you can always do the opposite of the target and you can actually exclude certain areas. And we do this a lot with, say, for example, an e-commerce company. Do you want to kind of go over how these exclusions work in our ads there?
Yeah, you bet. So one of the easiest examples is if you're working in the United States, you have a store and your vendor says absolutely not, I'm not shipping to Alaska, or I'm not shipping to Hawaii. This gives us the ability to exclude those two areas. And the same thing, of course, applies in any country that you're dealing with this. If you're in Canada and you're running a service business in the Greater Toronto area, you certainly don't want to be sending your guys to Saskatchewan to do a job. So you're not going to want to pay for ads in Saskatchewan. And this gives us the ability then to circle those areas out, or tell Google, we don't want to show up for the ads there. We don't want our ads to show up there and cost us money. So this is one where you could really save a lot of money on your Google account.
Yeah, because you don't necessarily want to be sending all that traffic out to Alaska and Hawaii if you're not prepared to actually ship to those locations. It's just a big waste of money, and it's a waste of time for the person that's searching as well. And there's lots you can exclude all the way down to like the postal code level. So you could, if there's a certain area within your location, you could exclude that. You could exclude the certain states, certain provinces, depending where you are. I've seen this actually a lot with exclusions too. People will exclude tons and tons of different countries. And this actually brings us back to our last point when it comes to presence or interest. Because if you're excluding a whole bunch of countries here, you're excluding India, you're excluding the UK, you're excluding all these countries and places. There's no real point to do that if you have your targeting settings correct. So if you're finding yourself having to exclude these locations because you're like, why am I getting traffic from this location? Why is it coming from this location? Then look for that other setting, the interest, presence for interest, because that's probably what's happening is you have that setting turned on and now you're getting traffic from all these other areas. If you want to prevent that, turn that setting off and then start to look at, you should only need to exclude stuff that's within your target. If you're not targeting the area, you shouldn't need to exclude it just to prevent Google from showing you in these other areas, unless you have that other setting I was talking about.
Yeah, this is a good one, especially like we've had a client in the Lower Mainland that is focused downtown Vancouver and does not want to be Lower Mainland wide. And this is what we use to be able to stop showing ads in places that are not in their core business area.
Yeah, exactly. And it could come in handy too if you do decide to try out interest and presence, because you can now control some of the areas you really don't want to show up for. So there might be, maybe you are just a local business and you've decided to turn this on because you're focusing around Vancouver, and maybe you want to see if you can expand to a few places around there, but you don't actually want to expand your targeting. So you're just going to turn the setting on, hope that some people around that area are looking to come into Vancouver to use your service, but maybe they're outside the service when they do the search. So that allows you to now target those people. But maybe there's a certain area in there you don't even want to include at all because you know you've tried it before, it doesn't work. So you can now exclude. So maybe it's Surrey or maybe it's Burnaby. You can actually exclude that area. And then you could, if you find out, oh, this one's not really working for us either, you can exclude that area. I would suggest actually just targeting those locations instead of using this the way I'm talking about here. But it could, there's so many different options, so many different ways. And really Google Ads is all about just testing things and seeing what works.
So Dan, let's just segue a little bit here. If anybody's got any questions about this, feel free to send us an email at support@focusyouраds.com. Or you can go right onto our site and there's a form on there that you can fill out and just feed us your questions. So we're going to kind of answer a question or two every time we do a podcast here. And hopefully we'll be able to shed some light on whatever questions you people do have. Dan, I got one for you that came in here today. Joe has asked, he's got 2 searches came through on the report. We send a, just so everybody knows, Focus Your Ads, we send out a report every week that details the search terms. And it's because most of the people we deal with know their businesses well. Everybody knows their businesses better than we do. So they may pick up on a search term here or there that we would miss, good or bad. So Joe, anyway, has picked up on this issue. He's had 2 searches within a couple of hours of each other. Basically, the identical search, but they came through at a different price, and they're about $2 apart in his cost for that click. So then that's the question: why is that happening to him?
Yeah, so it kind of goes back to the basics of how Google Ads works. It goes all the way down to the keyword. If you're doing a search ad, I'm assuming we're doing a search ad here. So we'd be talking about having one keyword, and we could even have the same keyword, or we could have 2 different keywords. And but even if we're doing the same keyword, we could have one bid. So let's say we bid for $2 in that one keyword. Now we could have a search term come in for $1. We could have, and this search term, just to clarify too, a search term is someone that's actually typed into Google and hit enter. That's the search term that's come through. Keyword is kind of the instructions we're giving Google and saying, hey, we want to find search terms and like this keyword. This is kind of the building blocks, what we want. And then Google uses that to find people searching. So we might have 2 separate people search for the same search terms. So someone types in maybe, let's say, plumber near me. So that could be under the same keyword. So it's plumber near me. Maybe that one costs us $1.80. Now we have another search term come in as well. So we have a separate one. Someone else types in plumber in Toronto, and maybe that one costs $1.50. Now, the reason there's a difference there is because they're both entering into the Google Ads auction at different times. It could even be the same time, but they're entering to different auctions because there are different searches that are happening. So every time a search happens, there's an auction that happens between yourself, different competitors. It's all happening at the blink of an eye, and everything's happening. And essentially, you are now getting a certain price. You set a maximum price that you want to spend. So if it's $2, Google is going to try to get you the best price under that. and every competitor is going to be somewhere in that range that's bidding $2. So you might bid $2 and you get that for $1.80 for one search. The next search you might get for $1.50. On average, you're probably going to get around the price you pick. So if you picked $1 or $2 for your cost per click, you're probably going to get around that cost per click, or at least under that cost per click. It doesn't mean that you're going to always show up for $2 every single time. So just because you selected maybe $200 per click doesn't mean you're going to spend $200 per click. You might only spend $2 per click if that is the highest bid in that auction.
Okay, so one of the other things that we're trying to do is if we discover something, if we find out some new little feature on Google Ads, we want to bring that to everybody's attention. So the one that we have right now is messaging apps. So Dan, if you can just explain a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this is something I just recently saw in Google Ads, and it's still in beta, which means that it's still a brand new product for Google, but it just suddenly popped into my account. I'd imagine it's probably not in every account out there, but some your accounts may have this. And it's a messaging asset that you can add into your Google Ads account. So just like you can do site links, you can do callouts. This is going to be and or forms. You can do forms. There's different assets you can add into your search ads, and they usually show up below your ads. So you have your headlines, your descriptions, and then below that you'll see some different, depending on how much room Google has, what position you're in, a whole bunch of other factors. They might show other stuff below that, and that could be the form, these built-in forms that Google has, or this new feature, brand new feature, is the message asset. And this message asset allows you to connect WhatsApp. And I kind of thought it was strange that it's WhatsApp, but that's the one that you have to use is WhatsApp. And you can connect that directly to your ads. So now you can have, say someone searches for plumber near me, they see at the bottom, they could see a message button saying, click on this button to message the person. So instead of actually having to phone the person, we're now in 2024, 2025, going into 2025, you can now actually just message the person. So this is pretty neat for advertising, because I can picture a lot of uses for this, where someone could go into, do the search and click on this app and now message someone. And maybe that person's just a support person, but they could arrange and get this all set up. So now your leads are all well taken care of and it's all happening. And you don't have to even pick up the phone and call them or fill out a form. You don't even have to go to the website. You can just go straight from here, message them, and get a conversation started right then and there. So I think it's pretty neat. I've only just tried this. I've put this on my own ads actually. And it's something I've just recently tried. I haven't even seen an impression on it yet, which means it hasn't even ran yet in my own ads. So it's something pretty new and something I want to experiment with. But I thought I'd just bring it to you guys so you at least knew it was there, because until I just saw it in my assets, I didn't even know it was a thing. But it's something that's brand new, and it's it's going to be pretty neat. I think it's going to take our ads to another level. So pretty cool.
Okay, so like I said, everybody, if you have any questions about any of the content that we've provided today, or anything else regarding Google Ads, shoot us an email. We'd be happy to, at very least, get it on the podcast. If we can answer it directly to you, we'll try and do that as well. And if you enjoyed the podcast at all, maybe shoot us a review. That'd be very much appreciated.
Thanks, guys, for sticking around to the end, and we will see you guys in the next episode.
Talk to you soon.